Now, it was easy to take a look at the ratio between the SPY and the SDS. Now, they're supposed to act as opposites. While the SPY increases in price, the SDS decreases in price. And when the SPY declines in price, the SDS increases in price. But because of the disparity, the difference between the two prices, you can actually take a look at these and see where, number one, you can identify where the equilibrium is between the two prices. In this case, I identified the 105.87 level on the SPY as the equilibrium price between the SPY and the SDS. Now, don't ask me why this happens, but I think it's because SDS is now an actively traded issue, very similar to the SPY, and there are programs and algorithms that are being programmed into computers worldwide for trading purposes that identify when these are under and overpriced. So the SDS is being traded the same way the SPY is. When it's underpriced, there's algorithms that step in and start buying the SDS, and they're selling the SPY. And when they are underpriced, they start selling. They start buying up the SPY and selling the SDS. And you can see that the equilibrium price is the price at which they cross. And so for the SPY, it was 105.87. Now, at the time, the SPY was up around 140. You can see the right price graph is the price of the SPY. The left price graph is the price of the SDS. So at around 140, you could see that this little bit of a bottoming process was starting to take place on the SDS. And going into early of 08, the SDS actually started rising very slowly. And here's another very important distinction, is that, remember, we talked about volatility, and this is where volatility comes into this market. When prices start to rise, they are less volatile. And if you take a look at this chart, you can see that the actual range of the prices as this bottoming process is taking place in the SDS is much smaller than the topping process that's taking place in the SPY. In other words, at the top of a market, remember, we talked about volatility increasing, giving us a clue that it was going to decline. In this case, the volatility of the SPY is much greater than the volatility of the SDS, even though the SDS is supposed to mimic the moves of the SPY, only in the opposite direction. Well, we've got less volatility in the SDS, giving us a clue that it's about to rise. We've got higher volatility in the SPY, giving us a clue that volatility is going to start coming into the market, and the SPY would likely decline. When those two when you get both of those signals, you get high volatility on the upside, you get low volatility on the SDS, and high volatility on the SPY, it gives you a clue that they're about to the market is about to reverse and go down. And that's exactly what happened. As this bottoming process in the SDS started to take place, I went long here on the SDS and short on the SPY, and my target was 105.07. Now, as soon as they crossed, I put in my stop so that I could protect my longs, or protect my short position and my long on the SDS. But you can see that actually what happened was the SPY dropped dramatically down to the 65 level. It was about this time where all of a sudden it started getting volatile again, and then the volatility started to decrease. And look what happened to the SDS. The SDS became very volatile at the top. And that was a clue that, in fact, the SDS was topping because of the volatility. Look at the wide swings we were getting in the SDS, while the swings in the SPY were starting to get less and less. And all of a sudden, they just started to go up. And then they crossed at 91. Now, that was the new point of equilibrium. The previous point of equilibrium was 105. And the new point of equilibrium was 91.19. That's where they crossed. And so what we had then was a point at which the SDS and the SPY crossed each other, and it was a good point at which to go long. You had decreasing volatility in the SPY, you had increasing volatility in the SDS, which indicates that it's going to go down, and you had decreasing volatility. So instead of relying on a single chart, like I told you in the beginning, that you would look for these elongated bars in order to determine when volatility is coming into the market, and you'd have these shortened bars when volatility was decreasing in the market, giving you an opportunity to go long. Now you have two signals. You have actually confirmation of the fact that volatility is coming into the market, and because the market is at the top and you have less volatility at the bottom of the market is ready to turn around and go higher.